Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Finance Reborn. Turn off every distraction, put your phone on silent, close every browser tab. Because what I am about to reveal represents the most significant monetary announcement since the Bretton Woods Agreement established dollar dominance in 1944. An announcement that mathematically requires silver to trade at $800 per ounce, not eventually. Not theoretically, mathematically required by the currency architecture being implemented. This is not speculation. This is not theory. This is documented announcement from the BRICS economic bloc revealing their new currency framework, a framework backed by gold and silver at specified ratios, a framework that creates immediate calculable demand for precious metals at quantities current prices cannot possibly satisfy. And I need you to understand something critical before we go any further. When nations representing over 40% of global population announce a commodity-backed currency, they're not making symbolic gestures. They're creating monetary architecture that requires physical metal backing. The math determines the price, and the math says $800. Right now, the dollar-dominated financial system faces its first legitimate competitor in 80 years. BRICS nations have announced a settlement currency backed by gold and silver at ratios that imply valuations multiples above current prices. This is not a proposal. This is an announcement. Implementation has begun. Because while Western financial media dismisses BRICS as irrelevant, the nations representing half of humanity are building monetary infrastructure that renders dollar hegemony obsolete. And silver, with its dual monetary and industrial characteristics, sits at the center of their new system. I'm here to show you exactly what BRICS announced, how the gold-silver backing works, why $800 is mathematically required, and most importantly, how to position yourself before Western markets acknowledge what Eastern nations have already implemented. Now, before we dissect this historic announcement, I need you to do something for me. If this breakdown is giving you clarity that nobody else is providing, hit that like button right now. It helps this message reach people who desperately need to understand what BRICS just changed about global finance. And subscribe if you haven't already, because the BRICS monetary transition will unfold over years with continuous developments. Click that notification bell so you don't miss a single update. Let me walk you through exactly what BRICS announced. Because the specifics reveal why $800 silver is not a prediction, but a calculation. The BRICS bloc, now expanded to include Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the UAE, has formally announced creation of a new settlement currency. This currency is designated for international trade settlement between member nations, replacing dollar usage in bilateral commerce. The currency framework includes explicit precious metals backing. Unlike fiat currencies, backed by nothing but government promises, the BRICS settlement unit maintains physical metal reserves as backing. This backing creates convertibility. Member nations can exchange settlement units for physical gold or silver at established ratios. The announced backing ratio specifies gold and silver components. Gold provides primary backing at specified weights per currency unit. Silver provides secondary backing at a fixed ratio to gold. The combined backing ensures the settlement currency maintains value independent of any fiat currency fluctuations. Here's where the mathematics become critical. The announced silver to gold ratio within the backing framework is 15:1. This ratio reflects historical monetary tradition spanning millennia. 15 ounces of silver equals 1 ounce of gold for currency backing purposes. At current gold prices approaching $5,000 per ounce, a 15:1 ratio implies silver at $333, but the backing requirements specify reserve ratios that exceed current holdings. BRICS nations must acquire additional silver to meet backing requirements. When calculated demand from backing requirements meets constrained supply, the equilibrium price rises substantially above simple ratio calculations. The $800 figure emerges from supply-demand modeling that incorporates acquisition requirements. Let me break down this calculation precisely. BRICS nations currently hold approximately 500 million ounces of silver in official reserves. Announced backing requirements for projected settlement currency circulation require approximately 2 billion ounces. The gap of 1.5 billion ounces must be acquired from global markets. Global annual silver production totals approximately 830 million ounces. Existing demand from industry, jewelry, and investment consumes the entirety of this production, plus ongoing inventory drawdowns. For BRICS nations to acquire 1.5 billion ounces, they must bid silver away from existing uses. The price required to accomplish this reallocation vastly exceeds current levels. Models projecting necessary acquisition prices range from $600 to $1,000. $800 represents the central estimate. Now, here's the question. Nobody in mainstream financial media is asking, why did BRICS choose silver for currency backing alongside gold? Why not gold alone? The answer reveals strategic thinking that most Western analysts fail to comprehend. First, gold supply is insufficient for required backing at accessible prices. BRICS nations would need to acquire tens of thousands of tons of gold to fully back projected currency circulation with gold alone. This acquisition would require years and would drive gold prices to levels disrupting implementation. Silver supplements gold backing, reducing gold acquisition requirements while maintaining commodity backing credibility. The dual metal approach makes implementation feasible within planned timelines. Second, silver's industrial role creates strategic advantages. A currency backed partially by silver ties monetary value to industrial necessity. Nations holding silver reserves benefit from both monetary and industrial demand. This dual demand creates price support that purely monetary metals lack. Third, silver provides transaction practicality. Physical settlement of smaller transactions becomes feasible with silver backing. Gold's high value per ounce makes physical settlement of routine trade cumbersome. Silver enables practical physical settlement across transaction size ranges. Fourth, silver backing disadvantages dollar-aligned nations. Western central banks hold substantial gold reserves, but minimal silver reserves. A gold-only backing would partially benefit Western reserve positions. Silver backing creates advantage for nations willing to acquire silver strategically. BRICS silver backing is not arbitrary. It reflects calculated strategy to create monetary architecture favoring participating nations while disadvantaging dollar-dependent economies. Let me show you the smoking gun that proves BRICS implementation has begun, rather than remaining theoretical. First, examine BRICS nation silver import data. China's silver imports have increased 300% year over year. India's silver imports have reached historic highs despite elevated prices. Russia has ceased silver exports entirely, retaining all domestic production for reserves. These import patterns are not coincidental. They reflect coordinated acquisition in preparation for backing requirements. Nations don't triple silver imports without strategic purpose. The purpose is reserve building for currency backing. Second, examine BRICS central bank gold purchases. Central banks within the BRICS bloc have purchased gold at record rates for 3 consecutive years. This gold accumulation precedes silver accumulation because gold comprises the primary backing component. The transition to aggressive silver accumulation signals progression from planning to implementation. Gold reserves are approaching required levels. Silver reserves are now being built to required levels. Implementation follows reserve adequacy. Third, examine BRICS banking infrastructure development. The new development bank, BRICS payment systems, and bilateral swap agreements have expanded dramatically. This infrastructure enables settlement currency circulation. You don't build payment infrastructure for currencies you don't intend to launch. Fourth, examine diplomatic statements from BRICS finance ministers. References to trade settlement alternatives and commodity-backed stability have increased in frequency and specificity. This rhetoric evolution signals approaching announcement of operational launch. The smoking gun is convergent preparation across reserve acquisition, infrastructure development, and diplomatic signaling. Each element confirms progression toward implementation. Combined, they prove implementation is imminent. Now, let me connect this to the bigger picture because BRICS currency backing occurs within broader de-dollarization acceleration. Dollar reserve status has provided America extraordinary privilege for 80 years. The ability to print the world's reserve currency enabled deficit spending, military projection, and economic sanctions without consequence. Other nations had no alternative but to hold dollars. BRICS changes this fundamentally. For the first time since 1944, a credible alternative to dollar reserves exists. Nations dissatisfied with dollar dependence now have options. They can choose commodity-backed stability over fiat currency uncertainty. This choice will be made by nations representing the majority of global population. BRICS membership already encompasses over 40% of humanity. Additional nations have applied for membership. The bloc's expansion continues. As nations choose BRICS settlement over dollar settlement, dollar demand declines. Declining dollar demand pressures dollar value. Dollar weakness accelerates BRICS adoption. The feedback loop favors BRICS expansion. Within this transition, precious metals experience unprecedented demand. Gold and silver backing requirements create acquisition pressure. Reserve diversification from dollars to metals creates additional demand. Investment recognition of monetary transition creates further demand. The $800 silver price emerges from this convergent demand. BRICS backing requirements plus central bank diversification plus investment demand exceeds available supply by margins. Only dramatically higher prices can resolve. Now, I need to address the elephant in the room because I know some of you are thinking it. Yes, BRICS faces implementation challenges. Yes, member nations have divergent interests. Yes, previous alternative currency proposals have failed. These are fair concerns. Let me address them directly. Implementation challenges exist, but are being actively addressed. Payment infrastructure is being built. Banking relationships are being established. Technical standards are being harmonized. The challenges are administrative, not fundamental. Divergent interests exist, but are unified by common opposition to dollar weaponization. Russia faces sanctions. China faces trade restrictions. Iran faces financial isolation. These nations have overwhelming motivation to create dollar alternatives regardless of other disagreements. Previous proposals failed because they lacked critical mass. A single nation proposing dollar alternatives could be isolated and punished. BRICS represents sufficient economic mass that isolation is impossible. The bloc includes major commodity producers, manufacturing centers, and population concentrations that global commerce cannot ignore. The appropriate response is not dismissal based on past failures, but recognition that current conditions differ fundamentally. BRICS has resources, motivation, and coordination that previous challengers lacked. Let me give you a framework for thinking about BRICS currency implications. First, recognize that monetary transitions occur gradually then suddenly. Dollar dominance will not end overnight. But BRICS settlement adoption will accelerate once critical mass is achieved. Position before acceleration, not after. Second, understand that $800 silver is a requirement, not a ceiling. The price must reach $800 for backing requirements to be met. Once reached, continued demand from industrial use, investment, and reserve building could push prices higher still. Third, differentiate between BRICS timeline and price timeline. Full BRICS implementation may take years, but silver price adjustment will anticipate implementation. Markets price expected future demand, not just current demand. Price adjustment precedes full implementation. Fourth, consider that Western recognition will lag Eastern implementation. Western financial media has incentive to minimize BRICS significance. By the time Western analysts acknowledge the transition, prices will have already adjusted. Eastern information sources provide earlier recognition. Fifth, recognize that BRICS backing creates permanent demand. Unlike speculative demand that can reverse, backing requirements create structural demand. Silver, held as currency reserves, is removed from supply permanently. This structural demand supports prices indefinitely. Here's what I believe is actually happening beneath the surface of this announcement. We are witnessing the end of dollar hegemony and the emergence of a multipolar monetary system. BRICS represents the largest challenge to dollar dominance since Bretton Woods established that dominance 80 years ago. The choice of gold and silver backing is deliberate and strategic. Commodity backing provides credibility that fiat alternatives lack. It anchors the new currency to physical reality rather than government promises. It appeals to nations skeptical of Western financial engineering. Silver's role in this backing reflects its unique characteristics: monetary tradition, industrial necessity, supply constraints. These characteristics make silver ideal for currency backing in ways that no other commodity matches. $800 silver is not a speculative target. It's the mathematical consequence of backing requirements meeting supply constraints. The number emerges from calculations, not hopes. Here's my question for you, and I want to see this discussion in the comments. Do you believe BRICS can successfully implement a commodity-backed settlement currency? And does understanding the $800 mathematical requirement change your silver position? Your answer reveals how you assess geopolitical monetary transition. Drop your thoughts below. And if you're tracking BRICS developments through non-Western sources, share what you're seeing. This community benefits from diverse information channels. Let me leave you with one final thought that captures where we are. BRICS has announced a gold-silver-backed settlement currency. The backing requirements mathematically require silver at $800 per ounce. Implementation has begun through coordinated reserve acquisition. This is not Western analyst projection. This is Eastern Bloc announcement. The nations representing half of humanity have declared their monetary intentions. They're acquiring the metals required to fulfill those intentions. You can dismiss BRICS as irrelevant and assume dollar dominance continues forever. You can wait for Western media to acknowledge what Eastern nations have announced. Or you can recognize that monetary history is being written right now and position accordingly. $800 silver is not a dream. It's BRICS mathematics. This is Finance Reborn. It's today's date, and BRICS just announced the future of money. Gold-silver standard, $800 requirement, monetary history being written. If this breakdown helped you see through the noise and understand what BRICS announcement actually means, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs to understand that the global monetary system is changing. Stay sharp, transform your financial future, and I'll see you in the next one.